courtroom was silent, the kind of silence that weighs heavy on the chest. A young maid stood trembling in front of the judge, her hands clutched together, her face pale. She had been accused of stealing a diamond bracelet from the mansion where she worked. Across the room sat her employer, a wealthy millionaire, confident, cold, and certain she would be punished. After all, who would believe a poor maid over a man of power and influence? But there was something in her eyes that didn't fit the story. They weren't the eyes of a thief. They were the eyes of someone who had been cornered, helpless, and unheard. Her lawyer hadn't shown up. She had no family, no friends who could afford to stand by her. She was utterly alone. The judge cleared his throat, ready to proceed when a voice broke the silence. "Your Honor," it said firmly. Every head turned. At the back of the courtroom a man stood. His clothes were modest, his posture straight. He was a single father, a military veteran who had come not as a lawyer, but as a witness, and something more. His name was Daniel Carter. Daniel had been sitting quietly for most of the hearing, watching, listening. He wasn't supposed to be part of this case at all. But he knew the maid. Her name was Alina. She had once worked part-time cleaning the small diner where Daniel and his daughter often ate. She was kind, gentle, and had always slipped an extra cookie to his daughter when money was tight. Daniel had seen enough in war to recognize when someone was being unfairly crushed, and he couldn't stay quiet. The millionaire's lawyer scoffed. "And who exactly are you?" Daniel stepped forward. "A man who pays attention," he said. The judge allowed him to speak. What happened next stunned everyone in the courtroom. Daniel wasn't just a veteran. During his service, he had been trained in intelligence analysis, a hidden genius at reading people and spotting inconsistencies. His calm eyes scanned the room, then rested on the millionaire. "You say Alina stole the bracelet," Daniel began, "but your timeline doesn't add up." He pulled out a small notepad. "On the night you claim it was taken, you were hosting a charity dinner. I know because I was there, seated at the back, invited by the American Legion group. Alina never left the kitchen. She was cleaning dishes the entire evening. I watched her." The millionaire frowned. "That proves nothing. She could have hidden it later." But Daniel wasn't finished. "I also noticed something else. That bracelet wasn't missing that night. In fact, I saw your wife wearing it at the dinner, laughing, showing it off. Isn't that right?" Gasps rippled through the courtroom. The millionaire's lawyer stuttered. "Objection." But Daniel continued. "And just 2 days ago, when I was at the diner, Alina came in crying because you had fired her. She told me the only thing she was guilty of was being poor." His voice cracked slightly, raw with emotion. "She has been taking care of her sick mother, working 2 jobs, barely sleeping, and yet you accuse her of theft without proof because it was easy." For a moment the courtroom was still. Then, from the front row, a little girl stood up, Daniel's daughter Sophie. Her voice was small but clear. "Elena's not bad. She gave me food when Dad didn't have enough money. Bad people don't do that." That simple, innocent truth pierced through the room more powerfully than any legal argument. The judge leaned forward, eyes narrowing at the millionaire. "Do you have evidence that she stole the bracelet?" The millionaire shifted uncomfortably. His arrogance began to crack. "No solid evidence, only suspicion." Finally, the judge declared, "Without proof, this case cannot continue. The charges are dismissed. Alina, you are free to go." Alina broke down in tears, her knees giving way. She looked at Daniel and Sophie with gratitude so deep it could not be spoken in words. The millionaire stormed out, humiliated. Justice, for once, had not bowed to money. Afterward, as the crowd dispersed, Alina approached Daniel and his daughter. Her hand still shook, but her smile was pure. "Why did you do this for me?" she whispered. Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder. "Because once, when I was at my lowest, someone stood up for me. Kindness should never go unanswered." Sophie grinned and tugged at Alina's hand. "Can you come to dinner with us? Daddy makes spaghetti, but it's not very good." For the first time in days, Alina laughed. That night, at a small kitchen table in a modest home, 3 people shared a meal. Not because of wealth, not because of status, but because humanity is strongest when people refuse to stay silent in the face of injustice. Alina wasn't just saved from a false accusation. She was given back her dignity, her hope, and her belief that good people still exist in the world. And Daniel, he realized that sometimes the greatest battles aren't fought on battlefields. They're fought in courtrooms, in workplaces, in everyday moments when one voice can change the course of another person's life. The story spread through the town like wildfire. People began questioning the way the wealthy treated those who worked for them. And slowly, change began to grow. Because one man spoke up, because one little girl believed in kindness. Because a maid who stood alone was not alone anymore. Elena sat at Daniel's table that night, still overwhelmed. She couldn't stop glancing at the little details of his modest home. Framed photos of him in uniform, Sophie's colorful crayon drawings taped to the fridge, a chipped coffee mug that read, "World's okayest dad." To her, this tiny house felt warmer than the millionaire's mansion ever had. "Eat up," Daniel said, sliding over a steaming plate of spaghetti. "Sophie's my official taste tester, but don't expect miracles." Sophie giggled. "It's lumpy, but yummy." Elena laughed for the first time in weeks. The heaviness she had carried since the accusation finally began to lift. She took a bite, and though the pasta was indeed a little overcooked, she found herself smiling. It wasn't the food that mattered. It was the company. Halfway through dinner, Elena grew quiet. She pushed her fork aside. "Daniel," she said softly, "you didn't have to help me today. You don't even know me that well. Why risk standing against someone so powerful?" Daniel leaned back, his expression thoughtful. "You're right, I didn't have to. But I know what it feels like to be on trial for something you didn't do. Back when I served, a mistake nearly cost me my career. I would have lost everything, until one man, a surgeon who barely knew me, spoke up. He saved my life. And I promised myself, if I ever saw someone cornered like that, I wouldn't stay silent." Elena's eyes glistened. I thought the world had forgotten about people like me. That no one cared." Daniel shook his head. "The world only changes when ordinary people decide to care. Sometimes that's all it takes." Sophie piped up with a mouthful of spaghetti. "Daddy says kindness is like spaghetti. You make too much, but it feeds everyone." They all burst into laughter. But outside their laughter, the world was already stirring. News of the courtroom scene spread quickly. A local reporter had been there, covering the Millionaire's charity scandal, and now Elena's story was on the front page,